Hey guys, I'm Wolf and the Fox, and welcome to a continuation of Part 2 of Everything We Know About Overwatch. So far. For the past few videos, we've been going over all the heroes of Overwatch, and have covered all the attack and defensive heroes. This time it's all about those big tank heroes, so let's get started. As a tank, your main role is going to be protecting your allies, meaning you have to be on the front lines and doing battle, or doing as much as you can to ensure efficiency from your team. This time around, we're going to start with everyone's favorite gorilla, Winston. Winston is the product of the Horizon Lunar Colony's new effort for space exploration. One specific gorilla displayed rapid brain development and was taken under the wing of Dr. Harold Winston. Harold Winston taught Winston, Gorilla Winston, science and talked of human ingenuity. Over time, Winston, Gorilla Winston, assisted with the doctor's experiments until one day when the other gorillas led an uprising in which they killed all the scientists. Winston, Gorilla, then officially took the name of Dr. Winston and escaped to find Overwatch. Firmly agreeing with all that Overwatch stood for, Winston stood by its side until its fall. He has since resorted to seclusion, waiting for the days of heroism to return. Winston's primary ability is his Tesla cannon, which fires a short-range electrical current. Jump Pack allows him to essentially fly through the air and unleash damage to all enemies that are nearby when he lands. Barrier Projector deploys a giant bubble field that absorbs damage until destroyed. All teammates can stand in the bubble to be protected and shoot from inside. His ultimate is Primal Rage, which gives Winston a boost in health, melee, and allowing a more frequent use of Jump Pack. While in this mode, he can only melee and jump attack. Next up we have Zarya. Zarya is one of the world's strongest women who also was born on the front lines of the Omnic Crisis. Russia managed to defeat the robot opposition, but as a result their region was destroyed. Since she was a child at the time, Zarya was surrounded by post-war Russia. As she grew, she swore to help her people recover. Through intensive training, Zarya was set to compete and shatter many records in the World Championships. Just before the tournament, her village went to war once again due to an attack from a long-dormant Siberian Omnium. Following the attack, she instantly withdrew from the tournament and rushed home to help. She is now a soldier who fights to protect those close to her. Zarya's abilities are led by her primary, the Particle Cannon, in which she releases a short-range laser beam or, alternatively, an explosive charge. Particle Barrier allows the Particle Cannon to create a barrier around Zarya to protect her from incoming attacks. Any attacks that come while in the barrier enhance her weapon's damage and the width of her laser. Projected Barrier allows Zarya to give one of her teammates a barrier that absorbs fire and powers Zarya's Particle Cannon. Her ultimate is Graviton Surge, where Zarya launches a gravity bomb that draws in enemies and deals damage to them while they're trapped within it. Rolling along, we have Reinhardt. A decorated German soldier, Reinhardt was part of the original Overwatch strike team that assisted in the end of the Omnic Crisis. Never afraid to speak his mind, he was Overwatch's most vocal supporter, who also had the admiration of his peers due to his unique ethics and larger-than-life persona. Serving until his late 50s, Reinhardt entered a mandatory retirement. Following, he wondered if he had a purpose in life, or if his glory would fade. When Overwatch fell, Reinhardt returned to the fight, to not let the world fall into disorder, defending the innocent and winning hearts and minds with the promise of better days. His primary ability is his Rocket Hammer, which can provide great damage with every swing. Barrier Field is an energy barrier that can handle substantial amounts of damage before breaking. He cannot attack while protecting himself and teammates through this method. Charge throws Reinhardt forward, grabbing enemies in his way. If he collides with a wall while carrying enemies, the enemies take great damage. Fire Strike is a projectile that releases from his hammer and damages enemies. His ultimate is Earth Shatter, in which Reinhardt slams his hammer into the ground, knocking down and damaging all enemies in front of him. D.Va is a hero with an interesting story, due to the fact that there is essentially two parts. That story starts with the Omnic monster that rose from the East China Sea and caused catastrophic damage to the coastal cities before being sent back into the sea. In response, the South Korean government creates the Mecha, which was an armored drone unit to protect from future attacks. Future attacks came in a pattern, and each time they would try something new, attempting to learn from previous efforts. As the Omnic continued to adapt, the mecha's drone control networks were disrupted, forcing the military to appoint a pilot to operate it. The government scrambled to find candidates that were suitable, and eventually turned to the country's professional gamers, whose reflexes and instincts were a perfect match. The world champion Hannah Song, aka D.Va, was drafted. Seeking her new mission as a game, D.Va is a relentless and fearless pilot of the mecha unit, and is ready to defend her nation whenever necessary. D.Va's mech is equipped with her main ability, the fusion cannons. These twin cannons can fire at a short range for continuous high damage, and will not need a reload. While firing, D.Va's movement is slowed. Light gun is an alternative for when D.Va is outside of her mech that fires a mid-range fully auto blaster. Boosters are accessible from her mech, in which she launches into the air and allows her to barrel through enemies and knock them back in the process. Defense Matrix is a targeting device that will shoot any incoming projectiles out of the air. For her ultimates, that's right, I said ultimates, D.Va has two, even though one technically doesn't count, but it's an extension of the other. The first of which is pretty self-explanatory, being self-destruct. D.Va ejects from her mech and sets it to explode, which can cause massive damage to enemies. The second is the extension like I was mentioning before, and it's called Call Mech, in which she summons a new mech to return to the battle as usual. Finally, for tanks we have Roadhog. Recently Roadhog was mentioned and is tied to fellow junker Junkrat. Following the Omnic crisis, Australia was in pieces, and the government gifted the Australian Omnium and surrounding area to the Omnics as a show of good faith. They were hoping to begin a long-term peace accord, but many residents of the country were permanently displaced. Mako Rutledge was one of them. Furious over the loss of their homes, Mako and the others had turned to violent rebellion. Forming the Australian Liberation Front, they attempted to strike against the Omnium and Omnic population to take back their lands. This confrontation escalated to the point where the facility had exploded due to the Omnium's fusion core being sabotaged. This resulted in Australia being covered in wreckage from the blast. Mako's home had become an apocalyptic wasteland. After adapting to his new environment, he donned a mask and set out to the destroyed highways. As time passed, his humanity was forgotten, as the ruthless killer Roadhog was born. Roadhog's primary ability is his scrap gun, which fires short-range shrapnel blasts, or, alternatively, a shrapnel ball that will detonate at a farther distance. Take a Breather allows Roadhog to restore some health over a brief amount of time. Chainhook allows Roadhog to throw his chain at enemies. Catching them will bring them into close range. Finally, his ultimate ability is Whole Hog, in which he loads his scrap gun with shrapnel that he launches at enemies, dealing damage and knocking them back with incredible force. That is all the tank heroes in Overwatch, and that'll about do it here. Next up is the final video in part 2, where we introduce all of our heroes, and we're going to cap it off with the support heroes. As always, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more Overwatch. Thanks for watching.